These two guys have Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackey and Judd on SKOR North and SKORNorth.com.
And before we jump into this Tuesday scoop session with our guy Darren Doogie Wolfson from the 5 Eyewitness News Sports Department, a shout out to our friends at Nicolay Law, the exclusive personal injury law firm of SKOR North podcasts. Nicolay Law knows that when you or a loved one gets injured, ordinary life can come to a stop. Things can get complicated. They can get murky, and that's where Nicolay Law comes in to get you the compensation and peace of mind you deserve after an accident. These are just normal folks in and around the Twin Cities community that happen to have law degrees to help you when you have been injured. NicolayLaw.com, or give them a call at 1-855-NICOLAY. Doogie's in the house. You've been at Vikings mini camps. You've been talking with Vikings people. Let's start with Vikings. We got some Wolves ownership stuff, a Brooks Lee nugget to get to, Doogs, but what else have you learned since the last conversation we had, just sort of perusing around Vikingsville?
Well, sure. Hello, boys. So last Thursday, so we would have chatted, Thursday morning. That afternoon, I was at the final day of Vikings mandatory minicamp. Had a nice conversation with cornerback Byron Murphy Jr., who, by the way, he was the last one on the field working with a young cornerback. So, I told him, hey, you could have been in having lunch, doing whatever in the locker room. You decided to stay on the field a good 30 to 45 minutes after practice. So I pulled him off to the side. I waited because I was fascinated just watching him give back when he really didn't have to give back. And I don't think he did it because, I was there. Our camera was there, right? He would have done it regardless. Many media had already left, but I decided to stay. So I pulled him off to the side. We had a nice conversation about the importance of giving back. Buda Baker, others in Arizona taught him about that. He even gave some credit to some people at the University of Washington. But then he also said, I asked him, hey, you're in a contract year. And he goes, yeah, I don't want to go anywhere else. He was being very sincere. He wants to be here for the rest of his career. That's how much Byron Murphy likes being a Viking. And so he said, hey, he has told his agent, hey, engage the Vikings, engage Rob Brzezinski. Let's see if we can work out some sort of extension before the season starts. Now, I don't sense anything is off the ground.
Do we get a hometown discount? A hometown discount on Byron Murphy Jr.?
Well, and he's still, 26, 25? So, he still might be looking at, if he has a good year. I don't know how we want to classify his 2023 season. Average, slightly above average. Was he great? I don't know if he was great.
PFF kind of hated him.
No,
PFF hated him.
He was not great.
Yeah, so average, right? So, it's a big year, right? If I'm the Vikings, I want to see, can he have a better year in 24 compared to 23 before I'm doing any sort of business in terms of a contract extension? But he said, hey, I've told my agent, this is where I want to be. I do think, talking to a number of guys, Judd, you might be able to piggyback on this. I do think, guys, there's a genuineness about how much they love being here. I do think there's something to be said, right? I'm a skeptic by nature. I scoff at a lot of stuff, but that Players Association poll, right, that ranks the Vikings among the best organizations to play for, that guys really, really enjoy playing for Kevin O'Connell. No, hey, no guarantees it translates to wins and losses. I still don't think this is going to be a 10 or 11 win team in 24. This is all pointing to next March, have all this cap space, go all in on free agency next March, 2025 and beyond. But I just think, Judd, a lot of guys really, really enjoy being here playing for Kevin O'Connell.
Yeah, I think that the one thing that we can all say is this. The culture thing is not, in this case, BS. In some cases, the whole culture thing is that's not true. In the Vikings case, I think they have established, and it starts with O'Connell, but they've established a culture that I think is good. Now, here's the Murphy thing that I would like to see, okay? If I may suggest this, Brian Flores, Kevin O'Connell, Kwesi, here's what I would like to see you do. I would like, because it's akin to a starting position, I would like to see you find two boundary corners and have Byron Murphy Jr. play exclusively inside. He is, in my opinion, not a good enough player to make that move. Keep in mind, yes, they're all considered cornerbacks, but they're not. The inside corner in the nickel is another job. Just for instance, when Antoine Winfield made that move, he did not continue to play outside as well. So I think trying to cross-train him to play two spots, and I know he's a veteran and I know that you signed him, but that being said, I would like to see them say, you know what, dude, we are in nickel 70% of the time. That's where you're going to play. And we are going to find two boundary guys, because I do think part of the reason why he struggled last year is that's a lot to put on a really good player's plate. And I think it's fair to say that Byron Murphy Jr. probably is a solid player, not a really good player.
I think that's fair. I mean, Phil, then who are those boundary corners? Now, like the feedback on Shaq Griffin so far is positive. I firmly believe he is one of them.
He is.
Is it Mekhi Blackman? Is it the rookie Jackson from Oregon? It's
That's
not
an
Andrew
interesting
Booth Jr., right? So, I mean, it's a position where there's not a ton of depth. Like we talk about the draft next year, first round, free agency, right? Like cornerback is a position to watch. But is it Blackman and Griffin? Can you trust those guys, Phil?
Well, I would say on Shaq Griffin, I think you start the season trusting him as a veteran. Now he's bounced around. He's not the same player he was 3-4 years ago. I think you start the season trusting him. I saw enough from Blackman as a rookie. I mean, there were certainly a few little mistakes here and there, but I saw enough from him. Even as a tackler out there, he missed 0 tackles according to Pro Football Focus last year. So, you know, you make a catch and you weren't breaking a tackle and getting 15 extra yards after the catch against him. Tyree Jackson's a really interesting one, though, because he's 25 years old. He was one of the oldest players coming out of the draft. This is his window right now. He's big. What is he? He's 6'3"?
Huge. Yeah,
I mean, he's one of the
6'4".
biggest. 6'4".
194, 6'4".
So does he start right away week 1? Not necessarily, but in terms of just a big boundary cornerback that can get physical with players, I think there's a reason why Brian Flores identified him as a cornerback of interest. So I'm kind of with Judd on this one. To me, Byron Murphy Jr., his future with this team is just go be the slot guy. Go be the nickel guy, and then the Vikings have to worry about finding some more consistent boundary. I love the boundary guys. That's a good football term
Boundary
there,
corners.
Judd. I think the boundary.
Well, I had a
defenders.
chat with Shaq Griffin the other day. He used it. He said,
Yeah.
hey, like boundary, like that's how Brian wants to use me. I'm like, okay, Shaq, yeah, keep talking the love language.
dirty.
Right?
Keep going.
Out here at TCO Performance Center. I think both of you guys are right on Byron, right? So that's why, like, I'll be surprised if an extension gets worked out, right? Like, if he was an outside shutdown type corner, okay, that's a guy, you're aggressive, you try to extend. Like, yeah, his skill set better fits inside. That's not a guy you extend right now. I think that's one you just let play out. If he has a really good year, you revisit it come next March.
Yeah.
Dukes, what's your thought on, and I think we're probably, once training camp starts, going to get into this more, but what's your thought on wide receiver 3? Because, you know, Jefferson, Pro Bowl star. Addison arguably could be a 1 on a lot of teams. He's a 2.
He looks really good. I mean, I get it. You're not in pads, all that, but like,
no, I know.
What I saw
I agree.
last week, he looked really good.
He catches the ball, and then you watch the next guy, and you're like, okay, that last guy is a really good player. But, you know, Brandon Powell, I think, is a contributor. I think there's a place for him on the roster. I don't know he's wide receiver 3. So from what you saw and from the intelligence that you've gleaned, what do you think about that? Because I'm not positive that opening day against the Giants, it's a slam dunk that Powell is the third guy. I think he's on the roster, but I think there could be some competition there.
Well, there's absolutely competition. I mean, I was frankly surprised. Like, they weren't in on Tyler Boyd. They weren't even in on, not that he's a number 3, but Mecole Hardman, right? Like, some of these guys, they had some interest in Hardman previously, but not in this moment. So some of these free agent receivers that have come off the board the last few weeks, like the Vikings weren't in on those guys. So what is the plan? I'm with you. Brandon Powell probably isn't the 3. They love Jalen Naylor. Can he stay healthy? Like Trent Sherfield? I don't think so, right? Like, to me, he's just a body. Naylor is the guy I would keep an eye on. I just don't know if he can stay healthy. I also think, like, we're going to see 2 tight ends on the field a bunch. Like, I think Tunyon is making the team. And maybe that's recency bias because he also had a really good week last week. But, like, Tunyon is going to be on the 53-man roster, I would wager, right? So I think you're going to see him get targets. You will see 2 tight ends on the field enough.
Could I throw another interesting name into the third wide receiver mix here? Just a little reckless speculation among friends.
Reckless speculation.
So I don't know if you guys are glued to the UFL like I am, but
Oh, yeah. Here we go.
the interview that Wade Phillips did with, was it ESPN or Fox, whatever channel their last game was on, he went out of his way. You could even pick it up like off microphone. He goes over to 28-year-old UFL star receiver Hakeem Butler, who was an all-XFL selection in 2023. He was the offensive player of the year in this year's UFL. He went for huge numbers at Iowa State back like 5 years ago, his last year. And then he had a league high 45 catches, 652 yards, 5 touchdowns for the Battlehawks. And Wade Phillips, who's the head coach, says to him, I'm going to tell everyone in my NFL circles that you should be playing on a National Football League team in 2024. Well, it just so happens that Wade Phillips' son is Wes Phillips, the offensive coordinator of the Vikings, who are, as we've talked about, starved for another wide receiver in the room. Just throwing it out there.
Oh, I think it makes some sense.
Speculation.
I wouldn't be shocked if another move occurs. Maybe it's late August, not immediately. Although in Butler's case, it wouldn't hurt. Bring him in for a look, right? I mean, the video speaks for itself, but bring him in. Why not? I mean, to me, there are still some moves to be made. Like, I'm walking in to practice the other day on the TCO Stadium turf, the stadium where, the Aurora play, the actual stadium, not the practice fields in Egan. There's Cam Akers working out with Mo Ibrahim, by the way, the former Gopher, and Day Murphy, the former Sacramento King, a basketball player who was doing some football workouts. But anyway, like Cam Akers, there's a reason why he's staying in town, right? Like, he wants to re-sign with the Vikings. Now, hey, they can tell us all they want about Ty Chandler looking good. Aaron Jones, yes, he does look good. Is there room for another running back? I guess we can have the debate about what Ty Chandler's ceiling is, but I'm just telling you, Cam Akers is hopeful. There hasn't been any movement yet, but Cam Akers is staying here in town for a reason. He wants to remain with the Vikings, free agent. So he's doing his rehab at Training House, right next to the Vikings facility. So whether it's Butler, Akers, maybe some other move, I still think there's a move or moves to be had over the next couple, maybe not weeks, but months.
Yeah. Okay, let's get into some other items here in just a moment on this scoop session. Did you guys know the Minnesota Twins are back in town? That's right. Beating up on bad teams like the Rockies. You can watch Royce Lewis hit bombs all summer long. You can watch Chris Paddock throw gems for 6 innings. There's a bunch of fun nights coming up on the horizon. June 13th on Thursday is Prince Night. The first 5,000 fans receive a Prince cap. Twins.com/Prince for those tickets. And old Macadac might have to go down on June 14th for that Florida post-game
Going down
concert.
for real?
Going down for real.
City
boys.
Connect as well.
City Connect
And the
jerseys.
City Connectors.
The City Connect.
Dude,
The ripple
people freak
effect.
out about uniforms. I love them. Take a shot on some crazy
Yeah, I'm
uniforms.
good with them. I don't care.
I'll fight you on that, Phil. I saw your tweet. I'll fight you.
You want to fight? Some guy literally
like
said,
them.
I would beat your ass. I'm like, dude, I was not serious about fighting over these uniforms. But anyways, twins.com/tickets. Twins.com/tickets. Also, our friends at Dennis Kirk are here for riding season. They have over 185,000 parts, apparel, and accessories for motorcycles, ATVs, UTVs, dirt bikes, you name it. They offer same-day shipping and free shipping on orders over $89 and even financing plans as low as 0% for up to 12 months. Check them out at DennisKirk.com. They're adding items every single day for Indian motorcycles, Honda Goldwings, and Striker trikes. DennisKirk.com. Let's go to Timberwolves here, unless you have any other Vikings things. But Michael Bloomberg brought his $100+ million, billion dollar net worth to the A-Rod Lowry group. Now, Dukes, that doesn't really matter unless A-Rod Lowry win the proceeding with Glenn, right? It doesn't matter at all before that point.
Yes. In fact, I was told that former Mayor Bloomberg joined the group before it was reported last week. Now, I don't know if it goes back weeks, months, but he's been in this mix for a while. But yes, Phil, until we get clarity on arbitration, then perhaps ultimately a board of governors vote, yes, it truly doesn't matter. Now, maybe one based on optics could say, okay, Lori, A-Rod, with great attorneys, they have a compelling case come arbitration. Now, I checked again this morning, by the way. We still do not have an arbitration date, right? So I would have figured by June 11th, we would have an arbitration date. We do not have an arbitration date. I foresee us having one at some point here in the near future, but right now in this moment, no arbitration date has been set, at least as of this morning. All right, but let's say Mark and Alex win the arbitration hearing. And I'm telling you, they have a compelling case, okay? Then it gets to the board of governors. Is it possible? Now, Glenn is buddies with all those board of governors, right? But, like, is it possible they look at it and say, okay, the 10th or 11th richest man in the world is now part of this ownership group. Yes, they have the money. Let's, okay, give them the 23 or 24 votes needed. Let's approve Mark and Alex as majority owners. Mm-hmm. I suppose there's a chance of that. I still think it's going to be tough, right, with Glenn being so close with all those individuals. But yes, ultimately, Phil, you're right. It doesn't matter until we have clarity on arbitration, then the board of governors. It's cool. It's a neat note, but it really doesn't mean much in this moment. I will tell you, by the way, a source close to Lori and A-Rod told me the other day, what this means with Bloomberg coming on board, it means, okay, they take down the final 20% at the same time they take down the 40% control payment. They are claiming, the Lori and A-Rod side, regardless of Bloomberg's presence, that they have all $950 million.
Yes. I've heard two things off that they have $950 million ready to show Adam Silver and the other owners, regardless of Michael Bloomberg's presence. This is what their camp is telling people. And they have proceeded to go ahead behind the scenes, continuing to plan this out long term, whether it's arena discussions, other things involving the franchise. I mean, they are going about this behind the scenes, not just for the arbitration hearing, but they are mapping out 3, 5, 10-year visions and plans behind the scenes, as if this is a foregone conclusion that they're going to get the team from Glenn for whatever that's
correct.
worth.
I mean, there's still a high-ranking employee that only reports to Mark and Alex. He doesn't report to anybody else, right?
Anthony Edwards.
I mean, that continues to be, it remains a weird dynamic. It really does. And that's why we need clarity. And hopefully we get that at some point, although, at this point, arbitration, okay, July or August. And who knows, will it be days later, a week later, 2 weeks later, a decision, right? Then we're looking at like September for a board of governors vote. So this thing is still going to be drawn out many, many more weeks.
So, Duke, just to be clear here, then, from what you're saying, and this makes sense if it's the case, if Mark and Alex get the team, the approval comes through, and now they are the majority owners of the team, they can immediately then or are at a place to buy out Glenn completely.
Yes.
So Glenn's got, because that's the one thing, no matter who wins here, I don't think it's realistic with how acrimonious this whole thing has gotten to keep the other side involved. So,
I agree. Although Glenn has told me in the past, he will retain 20% ownership. But Mark and Alex are led to believe that they can buy him out. Once they become majority owners, there's a plan. It's in writing.
Yeah.
That they can then buy out Glenn.
But it wasn't. But the point is, that's when it was going to be this slow process. And Becky and Glenn were going to serve pasta and bread and salad to Alex and Mark in the kitchen. And it was going to be a slow transition. I think now, if I'm the league, I want one side or the other side. I do not want this. This is already a mess. So my point is, if I'm the league, I would force this to be like, okay, whoever owns the team now owns the team, because this is it's turned into a gong show.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's been a gong show since they went on,
right,
record back in late March, right? Slamming each other, right? I mean, that's when it really turned into a gong show. I tried to lay out the case back in November, December, January that it was a bit of a gong show, but then it became public in late March.
And you were mocked for that.
I know I was. It's all good.
And you were right.
No problem with that. Yeah. But, okay, let's say Glenn
Take that, haters.
ultimately prevails. Okay, Judd? If you're Mark and Alex, what the heck are you doing with your 36% ownership? Right? What's the point?
They would
So
they would sell and
make
bank.
some money, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's no reason to be a limited partner to Glenn Taylor. I can promise you that
Correct.
if you're marking Alex.
Agreed with
Yeah. So wow. So we'll keep an eye on that. Okay, let's go to Twins here as we empty the scoop bag. Brooks Lee is back and presumably healthy. Could Brooks Lee be a threat to make a major league debut at some point? Now that it's him and Julian are, I think, kind of sort of competing. It's a race for which one of them can get hot over the next month and a half, and then maybe jump in and take that second base job. What are you hearing about Brooks Lee right now, the Twins' second-ranked prospect?
Although, what about Julian at first base?
That's an interesting one.
Played there a couple nights ago, actually.
He did.
You heard that theory on the SKOR Twin show months ago, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, why can't it be both? But yeah, I mean, it seems like there's a bit of a competition. I was over at CHS Field the other day on Julian, by the way, publicly told me all the right things about needing to work harder, pitch selection, right? He's taken way too many 3-2 pitches for a called third strike, first pitch swinging, did a decent amount of that last year, not as much this year. Then his first pitch he sees with the Saints, hits a home run against a good Mets pitcher that is on the big league roster, but didn't go to London. So they needed him to get some regular work. So he came down to AAA, started the other day at CHS. Julian takes him deep on the first pitch. So he told me, yeah, I'm looking to swing at the first pitch more. But I think privately, he's pretty upset. Like, I think he believes, hey, I should have been able to work through my issues at the major league level. Was it really that long of a slump? Like, doesn't my body of work going back to last year speak for itself? Wasn't there another move or two that was a bit more logical? But hey, that's the business side of things. But on camera, Eddie told me all the right things. I sensed a good amount of frustration. But hey, I was happy that he spoke with me on Brooks Lee. Okay. So I had a nice conversation with Brooks. Yes, he is back. Yes, Phil, I firmly believe he is going to make his major league debut this year. Uber talented, right? Lefty swing, righty swing, can play multiple infield positions. So much to like about Brooks Lee. So he misses all this time with this back injury. Here's what's alarming. He told me the back isn't 100% at this point. He has learned to play through the back issue, but that the back issue also predates March. So we learned about this back issue late March. I had not heard, maybe I just missed it, but I had not heard before March Brooks Lee battling a back issue. But he told me the back issue, he's had some issues with his back that predates March. So just something to keep an eye on. Anytime an athlete talks about back issues, like, to me, I pause. I just do. But he's learning to play through it, right? He's playing now. He's putting up good enough numbers, right? And I do think he will make his major league debut this year.
So Falvey held court with some reporters like this is mid-April. It was a couple weeks into the season. And I asked two things on it because there were issues with his back coming into the draft. And he claimed that this back injury.
I missed that then. Thank you, Declan.
But this specific back injury was not related to the same back injury that was lingering into his draft stock and into the MLB draft. And then when I also followed up, was surgery ever an option? They adamantly did not know. Surgery was never an option. He's on this very specific rehab doctor plan that is going to rehab the back injury. But I also I pause when I hear a young 20-something having significant back issues. And yes, surgery is your last resort disastrous option. But now we're 3 or 4 months in and he's still dealing with something. It's just, why didn't maybe we just start the clock and have the surgery, personally?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know all the medical, like, does surgery instantly solve whatever he's dealing with? He told me, though, he's been dealing with back issues for a while, and he's not. I mean, I appreciate, his candor and, being open and honest with me, but he just said, hey, I'm not 100%. Like, I'm learning to play through all this. Also had a nice conversation with Louis Varland, who starts tonight, spot start for the Twins. Figure Funderburk or somebody else will come up tomorrow. But Varland told me, hey, yeah, the numbers aren't good down here when I spoke with him at CHS the other day, but he goes, hey, I'm trying to work through some changeup stuff, my cutter. Like, he knows how to get out AAA hitters, right? So he's like, if there's ever a spot for me to work on stuff, it's now. And so he was hopeful he'd be back up with the Twins. Good opportunity tonight. I mean, the Rockies offense, I imagine Diaz isn't in the lineup, the All-Star Game MVP from last year, after he got hurt early last night. that Rockies lineup is pretty pedestrian. So if there's ever a chance for Louis Varland to fire some bullets, it would be tonight in this spot start.
So, Dukes, to go back on Brooks Lee, so we don't know what the back problem is, right? We don't know if
Well,
it's
he had
a
the
disc.
herniated disc, right?
Okay.
But, I don't know what the issue was pre-draft. I mean, he still went top 10, right? And there was some talk of him going even 1, 2, or 3, right? I mean, the Twins were grateful he fell all the way to pick 7. But I don't remember anything pre-draft, so thank you for that, Declan. But yeah, it was most recently the herniated disc was the issue.
Dude, let's empty the scoop bag here. What else do you have inside that pouch of scoops?
Sure. Mara Braun, remember, Gopher women's basketball star. She had a couple different foot issues, came back toward the end of the year for the NIT, but then re-injured the foot. Well, summer workouts began earlier this week. She was on the court, so that is positive news. Isaac Asama, incoming Gophers basketball freshman. Cool deal. He's on the Cherry High School baseball team. They are in the Class A state tournament. So he's balancing summer workouts with the Gopher basketball team while playing high school baseball. Cherry has a quarterfinal game in St. Cloud on Thursday. Also had a nice conversation late last week with Gunnar Bryon, Gunnar, Gunnar Bryon, Minnetonka High School 2020 graduate. Didn't qualify for the state tournament. He's a golfer. Didn't qualify for the state tournament 2019. Came close. Good player. Then loses the state tournament 2020 because of COVID. Fast forward 5 years, misses as a junior 2019. Fast forward 5 years, qualified for the U.S. Open. So he gets to play at Pinehurst this week. Pretty cool deal. He's at the University of Kansas right now. He told me, until he qualified, he had played pretty poorly all spring. So just a cool story. Kid from Chanhassen went to Minnetonka High School. Gunnar Bryon. Keep an eye on him. Maybe he can be low amateur this week at the U.S. Open.
Love it. Darren Doogie Wolfson from the 5 Eyewitness News Sports Department. Good session here, dudes.
All right, boys.
Thanks,
All right,
Dukes.
we'll catch you on Thursday. A Reckless Speculation Thursday on the
Can't
horizon.
wait. I'll be there. Sounds
This
good.
is Minnesota Sports with Mackey and Judd.